us. As we are letting everyone in from the waiting room, um, you may already be looking at the chat box or at the document I'm sharing on my screen. You'll see in both places there is a URL address. It's this one highlighted here in yellow at the top of the screen, and we're also going to be continuing to post it in the chat box. And now would be a good time to follow that URL because we'll be using a web page to launch all the resources and discussions we'll be doing today. And we'll be continuing to give some reminders about that. So you may hear us repeat ourselves in the chat a bit about that. But with that, um, welcome to our problem of practice session on strategic staffing, retaining and recruiting educators for school year 2021 to 22. My name is Megan Steiner. I work in the Pennsylvania System for School and LEA Improvement, and my job is to work on issues related to human capital. Now, what human capital means can mean different things to different people sometimes. So, when I say human capital, I'm referring to all the processes from preparing educators, recruiting and hiring educators, mentoring, developing, and of course, retaining educators in schools and in the profession. And again, for those of you who are just joining us, you'll see in the chat and highlighted in yellow at the top of the screen I am sharing a URL. It's important to follow that URL. You can either click on the URL in the chat, copy and paste it, or you can see the URL that is highlighted in yellow and you can directly copy that. Type it into your browser to get to the page we will be using today. And everyone will want to be able to access that page so you can access the resources we'll be talking about and the discussion guide that you'll be using for your breakout group. So with that, I'll get to the structure of this session. I'll first give some context for the issues we're discussing and give an overview of some suggested resources, which are linked in the page we'll be sharing. We'll then go into breakout rooms where participants will look briefly at two specific resources, one on educator retention and one on educator recruitment. And you'll use these documents because they may be of use to you, but also to use them as a jumping off point for a conversation with your group. So if you came here today with a particular challenge, question, or idea related to retaining or recruiting educators, you'll be welcome to share it with your group. It doesn't need to be specifically just about the resources you'll be viewing together. Now, after that, we'll briefly come back together and share takeaways as a group. So you may see from the page you have accessed and also from the page I am sharing on my screen, the purpose of the session today is to share resources, experiences, and strategies regarding retaining and recruiting effective educators in general at any point in time, but especially in the context of the transition to school year 2021 to 22, when some educators may be less likely to remain and some recruitment and hiring may still need to occur remotely. So nationally, some leaders this year have been expressing concern about educators experiencing higher levels of stress and leaving the profession perhaps at higher rates after this year. Um, of course, that remains to be seen what will happen between this school year and the next. But back in August, the NEA released results of a poll they had done showing that 28% of educators surveyed said they were more likely to leave the profession due to COVID, including more than half of the teachers surveyed who had 30 plus years of experience. So it was especially the case for those more veteran educators. Generally, experts advise proactive retention efforts, especially this year. So that means early on in the year, never too early to do it, showing educators we care about their views and their plans for next year. And all of this may be things you're already thinking of, planning, engaging in your schools and LEAs. And that's something we want to be able to discuss and take a look at and share with one another today. Now, this session is part of a series of problem of practice sessions related to the Pennsylvania Roadmap for Education Leaders. And at the top of this site, there are links to a couple of resources related to human capital that are part of this roadmap for education leaders. While they are not directly part of retaining and recruiting educators, these two resources are part of an overall healthy human capital system. Now, I'm going to go into some other Pennsylvania resources that we've created, as well as external resources from other places and organizations. You'll notice that there are links to all of these resources. The links are there so that you can easily check out the resources. And as you see any that may be of interest to you or any of your colleagues, you can bookmark them, save the links, what have you, in case it's something you would like to look into later. Now, for those of you who have just joined us, I'll encourage you to keep an eye on that chat box because that is where we will continue to paste in the link to the web page we are all using for this session. So if you haven't yet accessed the web page that looks an awful lot like the page I'm sharing right now, look to the chat box and you can follow the link or copy and paste that link. Everyone will want to be on this same page together to access resources and participate in group discussion and questions with their breakout rooms, which we will eventually go into. If you have any questions about that site, you can also type in your questions to our hosts. They may be able to help you with that. So going into the Pennsylvania resources, last summer, we published a toolkit of tools for remote recruitment and hiring of educators. Now, this was particularly in response to the fact that a lot of schools and LEAs had to move into more virtual work for their remote recruitment and hiring in response to the pandemic. But these are also tools that can be helpful in any recruitment and hiring processes. There are some really specific little subtools there around sprucing up your HR website or either beginning or leveling up a social media recruitment strategy and so forth. So they're around some specific little topics in there. And we'll actually be looking at one of those specific tools in the breakout rooms. Now, also under Pennsylvania resources, we have links to a recently published series of asynchronous webinars. These are related to different topics on recruiting, hiring, and retaining educators, including educators of color and those in hard to staff roles like special education teachers, for example. And there's also a webinar on student teachers, especially during this point in the year, who may be doing remote or hybrid learning. That's on there because providing a positive, productive experience for student teachers can be a key recruitment tool once those student teachers become certified teachers. Now, although these webinars I'm mentioning are asynchronous, they are still interactive. They are either panel style discussions or they have an interactive component with opportunities for participants, whether you're viewing the webinar alone or with colleagues, to reflect on current practices and do some planning. Now, there are myriad external resources out there related to topics of educator retention and educator recruiting and hiring. I do want to flag a few examples that can be specifically actionable at this point. So, the first um, under these external resources list is from TNTP. If you're familiar with them, they used to be known as the New Teacher Project, but now they're just known by their acronym. And this particular tool will actually be diving into a little more in the breakout rooms. It's about early teacher retention strategies of actually checking in with teachers about their plans. The second item on this list from Education Elements provides a pretty succinct overview of retention strategies. And you may want to, if you bookmark this for later, take a look at Section 4's discussion of the effects of COVID on retention and recruitment strategies. So that's flagged there as a link as well. The third item from American Institutes for Research is a quick graphic organizer visual that reflects the different reactions and stress levels of educators over the past several months of the pandemic. And I know that you've been living a version of this as well. The purpose for the conversation of retention of including this resource is to help ground retention efforts in educators' recent experiences. The fourth item, if you've ever heard of the organization Panorama Education, you may know they offer free, expert developed, well tested out survey items for various stakeholder groups, including for educators and other staff members. And deploying these free survey items can help leaders better understand how to support and retain quality educators. The last two items on this list, numbers 5 and 6, are from an organization called Urban Schools Human Capital Academy. Now, it says Urban Schools in the title, but they are not explicitly or uniquely for urban school systems. They also actually have some resources targeted toward rural school systems, and most of their resources are for any school system, really. So these are two examples of their resources regarding educator retention. Um, these are just some examples, and some of their resources can be fairly detailed. So you may look into these and decide not to use every single component of, let's say, their template for an educator retention plan. But it may be useful to look over their sample retention plan and think about how it compares and contrasts with what your LEA has planned. At the bottom of these lists, we have a couple of case studies and examples. So you may be interested to read from DC Public Schools about approaches they have taken in response to COVID that this school system has credited with improving the effectiveness of retention and recruitment from last school year to this one. You can also, in the second item here, explore how Tennessee uses its survey of public school educators to learn about their views of their working conditions and the supports that can help them effectively serve students. Now, I'm going to make another plug for those who have joined us recently to check out the chat box and look for the link to the web page that we are using for this session. If you're already there, awesome. But if you just joined us, you're going to want to look for that link, copy and paste it, or follow it, because you'll want to be on this web page to view the resources and also follow along in the breakout room activity with your breakout groups. So I'm going to pause for a little bit, about a minute, to let those of you who are not on that page yet follow that link. And those of you who are, if anything I just mentioned seems like that is something I want to check out, I know my colleague in such and such department wants to check that out. I know this principal would like to check that out. Um, you can bookmark it, copy and paste it, etc. So we'll just give a minute for everyone to do that, and then we will start moving into the breakout rooms. Now, a heads up about the breakout rooms. Those of you who registered earlier are already pre-assigned to a breakout room. Those of you who are not, who did not, you may need to self-identify of the breakout room you want to join based on the community type of your LEA. So right now on the page I'm sharing, you'll see there are, and I will in fact zoom in a bit, there are a few different options for how you can indicate which breakout room type you would like to join. So if you did not pre-register, um, now would be also a good time to use one of these three options to indicate which type of breakout room you would like to join. And then I will ask the hosts to, in about a minute, start moving people into those breakout rooms, please. Once you are assigned a breakout room, you're going to want to go on the website that we're all sharing now, you're going to want to move down and find the link for the breakout room you are a member of. That will take you to the discussion guide and the resources you'll be using in your breakout room. I'm going to ask you one favor. Once you're in those breakout rooms, there is a space for one or more members of your breakout group to informally record some notes from your conversation. You don't have to record everything, but if you can take some general notes on that shared Google Doc with your group, that would help us in the Pennsylvania System for School and LEA Improvement team to understand, are there any effective practices we may want to learn more about that are going on in LEAs? And also, how can we better support you statewide?
Hi, Megan. Would you mind maybe just scrolling up a little bit to show the options for joining a breakout rooms? Breakout rooms are now open, so if you are still with us in the main room and you need support getting into a breakout room, you can either rename yourself from the participant window, or if you just type in which type of room you would like in the chat window, urban, suburban, or rural, we can put you in a breakout conversation with folks in that same room. All right, if you're still with us in the main room and you'd like to join a breakout conversation, there are only a few of us in the main room, so it's okay if you want to unmute and just let us know which room you'd like to go into and if you need support getting into that room.
All right, so we're just waiting for folks to trickle back in. All right. So yeah, thanks everyone for your participation in the breakout rooms. It was I really enjoyed hearing the perspectives and ideas and questions raised in the room that I was in. Um, so I would invite you to either you can enter in the chat or you can take yourself off mute. But whether there's any retention or recruitment strategies either that you've been using in your schools that seem effective or that you heard about from colleagues, any ideas that you're using you'd like to share or any ideas you heard in your breakout rooms you think, oh, I might want to try that. You might want to hear about that, that you might want to share to share it at this time. And also my email address, as you can see, is here. If you have any follow-up questions, ideas, um, resources that you think other people might want to learn about, anything like that. But does anyone either in the chat or just, by taking yourself off mute and talking, want to share anything you or your colleagues are doing that seem useful?
Megan, we had one question. Jessica got it right at the end, and we all just came back. Is that they may be looking at going into college prep programs or colleges to their teacher programs to go talk to
Yep.
potential students. Is there a clearinghouse of contact information of all these schools and where they can get who to contact at a school for this? Like one.
I know a colleague at the Office of Post-Secondary and Higher Education who has that because I mean, I know there are lists that are available. I don't know about contact information, but anyone who is interested in like, how do I contact, how do I find out, in my region or whatever, who to contact from the teacher prep programs. Um, Copy my email address from here and I will share it with my colleague in the Office of Post-Secondary and Higher Education. That's a great question. I've worked with some folks. I used to work in Massachusetts and I've worked with some folks who were in some struggling urban schools. And part of their solution was to go in to the underclassmen in bachelor's programs for education. So yes, you want to talk to people who are later in their teacher prep career, but also who are earlier and get them thinking about working in, an urban school, a school that maybe is higher need, or maybe in special education or a higher need topic as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeremy, for sharing in the chat about the employee referral program in the rural group. Does that person from that breakout room want to share about that?
This is Jean Deisel. I was not in that breakout room, but one of the more interesting sort of comments that I heard is that there are districts that are sort of volunteering with colleges and universities to do mock interviews as a for example. But the whole idea of this is the closer connection you have to that college or university, the more collaboration you can have. There's a higher likelihood that you'll be able to get some good candidates from those places as well. And also, of course, taking in student teachers and working with them as well. So that gives you sort of a firsthand look of sort of the new crop of teachers who might come out. So I mean, that's probably just common sense, but I thought that was a worthy note. Volunteer your time to do these mock interviews, and it may pay off for you.
That's a great point. Thanks. Anyone else share anything or hear anything that you think, oh, whether it's a big thing or a small thing, it's a good idea to share?
One other thing we had, Megan, was when you have that conversation with your staff, especially that high veteran teacher who's thinking about retirement, what does that conversation look like to get them to stay, another year or two in this environment when they're not comfortable with the technology, they're not sure if they want to go and have that, and so that's a big topic.
Yeah, does anyone have any, I know we looked at that resources about teacher stay conversations, but anyone have any ideas about those conversations? What works? Certainly heard having them early in the year, like even now, can be helpful.
In our group, rural number 2, there was talk about using the resources you provided and including data in when you're talking to the teachers, as a positive and as a way to show that things are still cruising along. So that was helpful to them.
Awesome. All right, if anyone has any other ideas that folks shared or any questions, I'd welcome you to stick around. Otherwise, if you want to have 5 minutes back of your day, by all means, go ahead and do that. I know it may be lunchtime and so forth. If you do have any specific questions, certainly you can stick around, or I'd highly invite you to email me as well. And thanks so much for all your participation.